My wife is training for a marathon. I discovered her real finish line. It's funny, how life just shifts. One minute you're comfortable, settled, thinking you've got it all figured out, and the next, you're staring into an abyss you didn't even know existed. That's where I am. And honestly, if you're getting anything out of this, anything at all, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it helps us keep these stories coming. And while you're at it, a like and a share would be amazing. And let me know in the comments if you've ever felt blindsided like this. Your thoughts? They matter. They really do. I'm not sure where to even start. Emily. She's always been dedicated. That's the word I used anyway. Dedicated to her job as a graphic designer, dedicated to her art, dedicated to, well, me. Or so I thought. A few months ago, she announced she was running a marathon. Not just any marathon, the Chicago one. Said it was a lifelong dream, something she needed to do for herself. I was all for it. I cheered her on, bought her new running shoes, made sure she had her gels and hydration packs. I even started setting my alarm an hour earlier just to make her breakfast runs less lonely, even if I was just sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, watching the sun creep over the rooftops of our little suburban house. She was different, though. Not in a bad way at first, just focused. Every evening after work, it was miles and miles. Sometimes I'd go with her, on my bike, trailing behind as she pounded the pavement in our neighborhood, the rhythmic slap of her Nikes a constant soundtrack to my evenings. Other times, she'd leave before I even got home, a note on the counter. Long run, don't wait up, love you. And I'd sit there, the smell of her perfume still lingering in the air, and feel this weird mix of pride and something else, a whisper of a feeling I couldn't quite name. Insecurity, maybe? She was off chasing a personal Everest, and I was here, making dinner, watching TV. Our life was good, solid. We'd been together 8 years, married for 5, met in college, a whirlwind romance, then this slow, steady building of a life. A comfortable house with a yard that needed mowing way too often, 2 cars in the garage, weekend trips to see friends, holidays with family. It was the picture of suburban contentment. We talk about kids, about retirement plans, the usual. Nothing felt forced, nothing felt like a performance. It was just us. And Emily, this amazing, driven woman who was now out there, pushing her body to its absolute limits for this marathon. I remember one Tuesday night, she'd planned a brutal hill workout. I was working late, and by the time I got home, she was already out. The sky was this bruised purple, the streetlights just starting to flicker on. I sat on the porch swing, the evening air thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and watched the empty street. An hour passed, then another. I started to get that familiar knot in my stomach. Not worry, exactly, more like a low-grade hum of anxiety. She always called if she was going to be significantly late, always. I was starting to think about calling her, but my phone buzzed. It was her, a text. SOS, car died, stranded near Elmwood Park. Can you pick me up? So sorry. Elmwood Park was a good 15 miles away, definitely not on her usual route, but okay, fine. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and headed out. The drive there was uneventful, just me and the radio, the highway lights blurring past. When I got to the park entrance, I saw her standing there, under a flickering streetlight, her face a pale oval in the dim light. She looked exhausted, but also wired. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. She was wearing her running gear, of course, but it was plastered to her with sweat. Hey, I said, pulling up beside her. You okay? She jogged over to the car, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Yeah, engine just sputtered and died, total shock. She slid into the passenger seat, smelling faintly of sweat and something else, something floral, almost cloying, mixed with the outdoor hair. Not her usual scent. Where were you running? I asked, putting the car in reverse. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, and that's when the first real prickle of unease, that almost imperceptible shift, happened. Just a new route, trying to explore some different trails. You know how it is with marathon training? Her voice was a little too breezy. Right, I said, keeping my eyes on the road. Elmwood Park wasn't exactly known for its scenic running trails, more for teenagers making out and people who didn't want to be seen. So, she continued, her voice a little too bright now, what did you do tonight? I told her about my late meeting, about the report I had to finish, the usual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She kept fiddling with the strap of her watch, her gaze fixed on the passing cars. When we got home, she practically bolted out of the car. I'm going to shower, she said, already heading for the stairs. I'm so gross. I watched her go, that strange floral scent still clinging to the air. I dismissed it.
Maybe she'd passed some blooming bushes, maybe she'd sprayed herself with a new body spray before her run. People did that. The next few weeks were a blur of training, long runs, speed work. Emily was more dedicated than ever. She'd come home from some of her longer runs absolutely shattered, but still with that same restless energy. I started noticing other things, little things at first. She'd be on her phone more, even when we were sitting together. Quick glances, a hurried typing, then tucking it away. If I asked who it was, she'd say, work stuff, or just my sister. But the way she'd do it, the almost furtive way she handled her phone, it felt different. Then there were the unexplained absences, not just the long runs. Sometimes she'd go out for an errand and be gone for hours. When I asked, she'd be vague, just needed to clear my head, or had to pick something up. I'd see her car parked a few blocks away from our house, not in the driveway, and she'd be wearing her running clothes, but she'd just come from the gym, which was on the other side of town. The gym didn't have those kinds of flowers. One Saturday, she was supposed to do a 20-mile training run. I decided to surprise her. I drove out to the route she usually took, planning to meet her halfway with a Gatorade and some encouragement. I was about 10 miles in, cruising along a stretch of road that bordered a state park, when I saw a familiar figure up ahead. It was Emily, in her bright pink running top and black shorts. But she wasn't alone. She was laughing, her head tilted back, with a man I didn't recognize. He was taller than me, broad-shouldered, his arm casually draped around her shoulders as they walked, not ran, but walked. They stopped, and he leaned in, kissed her, a full-on kiss, right there on the side of the road. It wasn't a friendly peck, it was intimate. My heart hammered against my ribs. The car swerved slightly. I slammed on the brakes, pulling over to the shoulder. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I watched them for a moment, frozen. They were so absorbed in each other, they hadn't even noticed me. She looked so happy, so utterly, completely happy.
A happiness I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I don't know what I expected. For her to be running alone, lost in her own endorphin-fueled bubble. For her to be struggling, needing my rescue. Not this. This was a scene ripped from a bad movie. My wife, out on her marathon training run, with another man, kissing him. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, my mind a chaotic mess of images and emotions. Anger, sharp and hot, confusion, a suffocating fog, and a deep, gnawing pain that spread through my chest like wildfire. I wanted to scream, to honk the horn, to jump out of the car and confront them, but I couldn't. My body felt leaden, my limbs useless. Eventually, they started walking again, hand in hand, disappearing around a bend in the road. I stayed put for another 10 minutes, the silence in the car deafening. The Gatorade sat on the passenger seat, a mocking reminder of my naive attempt at support. I thought about her text about her car breaking down, and Wood Park, the floral scent. It all clicked into place with sickening certainty. This wasn't a new route. It was a new life. I drove home on autopilot. The house felt alien. Every object, every photograph of us smiling, laughing, felt like a betrayal. I went into our bedroom, and her running gear was spread out on the floor, a testament to her dedication. I picked up her water bottle, and the faint, cloying floral scent was still there. It wasn't from bushes. It was her. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. The shock was too profound, the betrayal too deep. I just existed, waiting for her to come home, to perform the routine of our evening, to lie the right face. The marathon was still weeks away. Her real finish line, I was starting to suspect, had nothing to do with crossing a ribbon in Grand Park. It was something far more personal, far more devastating. And I was trapped, watching it unfold, powerless. The next few weeks were a masterclass in pretending. She'd come home from her long runs, exhausted, smelling faintly of that perfume, and I'd offer her water, ask her about her pace, all the while feeling like a fraud, like I was complicit in her deception. The guilt was almost unbearable. I was so angry, so hurt, but a part of me, a twisted, self-destructive part, just wanted to keep watching, to see how far this would go, to see the real finish line. The silence in the house became a character itself, a heavy blanket smothering any lingering warmth. Emily would come home, and I'd go through the motions. "How was the run, honey?" I'd ask, my voice flat.
betraying nothing of the inferno raging inside me. She'd launch into a monologue about miles logged, blisters, the agony of that final hill, the triumphant feeling of pushing through. She'd talk about the race, the strategy, the competition. And I'd nod, chew my food, try to maintain eye contact, all the while cataloging the subtle shifts in her demeanor. The way her eyes would briefly flick away when I asked about a particular stretch of road, the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for her wine glass. Every compliment she'd given me about my support. "You're the best husband, always so understanding," or "I couldn't do this without you cheering me on," felt like a barbed arrow. She was a professional liar. And I, it turned out, was her most captive audience. The marathon was only 3 weeks away, and the intensity of her training ramped up. She was doing back-to-back long runs on weekends, often leaving before dawn and returning well after dusk. I started to dread those weekends. I'd find myself pacing the floor, staring out the window, my mind conjuring increasingly elaborate scenarios. Was she meeting him every time? Was it just occasional? Did they have a plan? The questions gnawed at me, relentless and unanswered. I avoided looking at her training logs, the meticulously recorded miles and paces. They felt like a roadmap to her betrayal. One evening, about a week before the race, she was stretching in the living room, her yoga mat spread out on the hardwood floor. She was wearing one of those impossibly tight athletic outfits, her muscles defined, her body a testament to the rigorous discipline she'd imposed upon herself. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to read a book, but my eyes kept drifting to her. The same scent, that damn floral perfume, was clinging to her, stronger tonight. It was like a phantom limb, a constant reminder of her secret life. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her voice a soft murmur as she transitioned into a warrior pose. I finally lowered the book. "Just thinking." "About what?" She held the pose, her brow furrowed slightly. "About how much this means to you," I said, trying to inject a semblance of genuine admiration into my voice. "It's incredible, Em, honestly." She finally lowered her arms and walked over to the couch, sitting beside me. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of the old comfort returned. But it was tainted. Her skin felt warm, and I could feel the subtle thrum of her racing heart beneath my cheek. "Thanks," she whispered. It's been harder than I ever imagined, but it's also been freeing." Freeing. That word hung in the air, charged with unspoken meaning. Freeing from what? From me? From our life? "You know," she continued, her voice picking up a slight, almost conspiratorial tone, "I met someone during my training, someone who really gets it." My blood ran cold. The casual way she said it, as if she were discussing a new running buddy who shared her passion for artisanal coffee. I kept my expression neutral, forcing a small smile. "Oh yeah? Who?" She chuckled, a light, airy sound that grated on my nerves. "Just a guy. He's a runner too. We met on those really long early morning runs. He was going through a tough patch with his own training, and we just clicked. He's been such a support." I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. He's been such a support. She'd said that about me, hadn't she? Or I'd said it about myself. Now someone else was getting that credit. "A support for what?" I managed to ask, my voice dangerously low. She pulled away slightly, her gaze now fixed on the television screen, though it wasn't on. "Just, you know, the mental side of things. The sacrifice. He understands the commitment." She paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "His name is David, by the way." David. The name echoed in the cavernous space of my mind, a new layer to the deception. I had no idea if this was the same man I'd seen her with or someone else entirely. The thought of her confiding in another man, sharing the intimate details of her struggles and triumphs, things I'd always felt were ours to share, was a fresh stab. "David," I repeated, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. "So, this David, is he running the marathon too?" "Oh, no," she said quickly, a little too quickly. He's not racing this year. He's more of a coach, I guess you could say. He gives me advice, helps me with my pacing strategy." A coach. I clenched my fists under the table. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragmented information, the unexplained absences, the furtive phone calls, the scent of perfume, the man on the side of the road. David. And now she was telling me about him, weaving him into the narrative of her marathon journey, a narrative I was supposed to be a passive observer in.
"Right," I said, pushing myself up from the couch. I think I'm going to get some air. I walked out the back door into the cool evening. The stars were out, a vast, indifferent expanse. I leaned against the railing of the deck, the wood rough against my palms. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling. I opened my contacts. I scrolled past Emily, past friends, past family. Then I found it, a number I hadn't used in months. Not since I'd found out about her, about the other woman. I hesitated for a long time, the internal battle raging. Should I confront her? Should I just let it all play out? But the thought of David, of him coaching her, of her sharing that intimacy with him was too much. I needed to know. I needed to see his face. I took a deep breath and pressed the call button. The phone rang, each ring a hammer blow against my resolve. On the third ring, a gruff voice answered. Yeah. I swallowed, my throat tight. Is this David? There was a pause, a loaded silence. Who's asking? My name's Mark, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Mark Miller, Emily's husband. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear faint background noise, like a bar or a busy street. Then, a low, sardonic laugh. Well, fancy that. You finally figured it out, huh? The casualness of his tone, the utter lack of surprise, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. He knew. He'd known all along. He was waiting for me to find out. Figured what out? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. That your wife is a bit of a runner, he said, his voice laced with a cruel amusement. And that she likes to explore different routes. Where did you meet her? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Oh, we've known each other a while, he said, the amusement deepening. She came to me for advice, remember? Said she was looking for someone to help her reach her goals. He paused. Turns out, we had a lot of the same interests. Interests. The word felt so clinical, so detached. So, the runs? Elmwood Park? That was you? Sometimes, he admitted, a smugness creeping into his voice. Sometimes it was just her finding her own pace. But yeah, we've had our share of training sessions. Very productive ones. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. You know she told me you were coaching her, helping her strategy. He let out another laugh, louder this time, a harsh, grating sound. Oh, I'm coaching her all right, coaching her on a lot of things. Not just how to shave a few seconds off her time. He lowered his voice, and it was like ice water in my veins. She's a quick learner, your wife. Very receptive. You'd be surprised what she's capable of. The implications were staggering. The casual way he spoke about her, about their sessions, stripped away any remaining illusion I had about her devotion to our marriage. This wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper, something more deliberate. And he was relishing in my pain, in the unraveling of my life. Who are you? I finally managed to choke out. What do you want? Me? He chuckled. I'm just a guy who enjoys a good challenge. And Emily, well, she's quite the challenge. And you, Mark? You're just collateral damage, I guess. The poor sap who thought he knew his wife. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick and suffocating. I'm going to find you, I spat out, the words raw with desperation and fury. I'm going to find you and... He cut me off with a dismissive scoff. Go ahead. I'm not hard to find. Just keep an eye on your wife's training schedule. I'm sure she'll be happy to fill you in on our next appointment. He hung up. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the deck. I stared at it, my mind a whirling vortex of despair and rage. Collateral damage. The phrase echoed in my head, a brutal indictment of my own naivete. He knew, and he didn't care. He was proud of it. I stumbled back inside, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. Emily was still sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I entered the room, her expression one of mild inquiry. Everything okay? I stared at her, at the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had shared my bed, my life, my dreams. Now all I saw was a stranger, a calculating predator cloaked in the guise of an ambitious athlete. The scent of her perfume seemed to mock me, a siren's call leading me to ruin. Who is David? I asked, my voice unnervingly calm.
The quiet was more terrifying than any outburst. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Panic, guilt, crossing her face. But she recovered quickly, a practiced ease settling back into her features. "I told you," she said, her voice regaining its usual warmth. He's a guy I met through running. He's been helping me with my training. Gives me tips." "Tips?" I repeated, my gaze fixed on hers. She shifted uncomfortably, her fingers twisting the hem of her athletic top. "You know, about pacing, nutrition, mental fortitude." She forced a smile. "He's very experienced. He's done a few marathons himself." "And you met him? Where, exactly?" I pressed, my voice hardening. The calm was a fragile facade, about to shatter. She hesitated for a beat too long. We met a few weeks ago, on one of my longer runs. Near that state park, you know. The one where I saw you," I blurted out, the words tearing from my throat. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. The carefully constructed mask crumbled, revealing the raw fear beneath. What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Emily," I said, my voice rising, the dam of my control finally bursting. "I saw you, that Saturday, near the park, with him. You were kissing him." The confession hung in the air, a sickening, undeniable truth. She flinched as if I'd struck her, her gaze dropping to the floor. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. He's not important," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. A moment of weakness," I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You lied to me for months, Emily. You were sneaking around, meeting him, smelling like his goddamn perfume. And you call it a moment of weakness. You call this betrayal, a mistake." I was standing now, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "You told me you were training for a marathon. But your real finish line, Emily, it was with him, wasn't it?" Tears streamed down her face, but they looked performative, a desperate attempt to salvage something. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I got lost. I didn't know what I was doing." "You knew," I spat out, the words laced with venom. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew you were destroying me. You knew you were betraying everything we had." I stopped pacing, my eyes locking onto hers. "And I want to know everything. Every run, every kiss, every lie. I want to know the whole damn story, Emily, because I'm not letting you get away with this. Not a chance." I took a step closer, my voice a low, dangerous growl. "Tell me about David. Tell me everything. And if you lie to me one more time, if you hold anything back, I swear to God, Emily, I will burn this whole damn life down around us." The air crackled with tension, her sobs the only sound in the room.
I waited, my chest heaving, for her confession, for the full, brutal truth that I knew would shatter what little remained of my world. The marathon was days away, but the real race, the race for my sanity, for some semblance of closure, had just begun. And I had a horrible feeling. It was a race I was destined to lose. The confession came in fits and starts, a halting, broken stream of words that were both a relief and a fresh hell. She told me about David, about how they'd met at that local running store, the one I'd never gone into, the one she always said had better gear. He was older, divorced, a former semi-pro runner whose career had been cut short by injury. He'd seen her potential, he told her, and she'd been flattered, hooked. He understood the discipline, the drive, the relentless pursuit of a goal. He understood the sacrifices. He understood her. The words twisted inside me, each syllable a fresh wound. He understood her, not me. I, who had meticulously plotted her race routes on maps, who had researched hydration strategies, who had bought her every piece of specialized equipment she'd ever pointed at, who had listened for hours to the minutiae of her training, felt like a forgotten footnote in her life's narrative. She admitted to the meetups, to the clandestine meetings in quiet parks, to the passionate, desperate moments in his car parked on deserted country roads. She described the thrill, the rush of adrenaline that wasn't from pounding pavement, but from the forbidden. It was, she said, an escape from the mundane, from the predictable comfort of our life, from the quiet hum of our routines.
She spoke of his attentiveness, how he'd analyzed her gait, her breathing, her mental blocks, offering advice that was both technical and strangely intimate. He made her feel seen, she stammered, a ghost of a sob escaping her lips. Seen. Hadn't I seen her? Hadn't I celebrated every mile, every personal best, every sweaty, exhausted triumph? Apparently, my vision had been too clouded by love, by trust, by the simple, dumb assumption that we were a team. The marathon. It was still on. She was determined to run it, to cross that finish line. And David, she confessed, was going to be there. Not at the finish line, cheering with the crowds, but somewhere along the course, a hidden marker of her secret life, a silent witness to her continued deception. He'd offered to pace her for a section, he'd called it, to push her through a particularly challenging part of the course. The words felt like a physical blow, each one confirming the depth of her betrayal. He was going to be on the course, sharing a moment with her, a moment that belonged, or should have belonged, to me. The sheer audacity of it, the utter disregard for my feelings, left me speechless. As she recounted the details, the shame and guilt etched on her face were palpable, but they were tinged with a strange sort of defiance, a flicker of the obsession that had driven her to this point. It wasn't just about David, or even the thrill of the illicit. It was about the race, the ultimate race, and she was going to run it, no matter the cost. The cost, I thought numbly, was everything. Our marriage, our future, my very sense of reality. I listened, numb and hollowed out. There were no grand pronouncements from me, no dramatic outbursts of fury. The rage had burned itself out, leaving behind only a cold, suffocating dread. I felt like a character in a movie I hadn't auditioned for, thrust into a scene I never wanted to be a part of. I watched her weep, watched her confess, watched her dissect our life piece by piece, and all I could feel was a profound, crushing emptiness. The following days were a blur of suffocating silence and forced normalcy. The marathon was just 2 days away. Emily was going through the motions of race preparation, carb loading, laying out her gear, mentally rehearsing her strategy. She moved around the house like a phantom, her eyes downcast, avoiding my gaze. I, on the other hand, felt like I was made of stone. I couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I watched her, cataloging her every move, searching for any sign of remorse, any hint that she understood the magnitude of what she had done. But her focus remained solely on the race. It was as if our shattered life was just an inconvenient detour, a minor obstacle she had to navigate before reaching her true destination. The morning of the marathon dawned crisp and clear, a perfect running day. I watched her leave, her running gear a stark contrast to the heavy weight of my own despair. She looked determined, focused, a finely tuned machine ready to execute its programmed mission. She didn't hug me goodbye, she didn't say she loved me, she just walked out the door, and the click of the lock felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I didn't go to the finish line. I couldn't. I imagined the crowds, the cheers, the triumphant moment of her crossing that imaginary line. I envisioned David there, a subtle smile on his face, sharing in her victory, a victory built on a foundation of lies. The thought was unbearable. Instead, I sat in our living room, the silence pressing in on me, a physical weight. I stared at the framed photos of us, the smiling faces from happier times, the moments captured before the rot set in. Each image was a betrayal, a cruel reminder of what I had lost. Hours crawled by. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the room. I checked my phone compulsively, a desperate, masochistic ritual. No calls, no texts, nothing. I imagined her showering, basking in the post-race glow, perhaps with David, celebrating her accomplishment. The image was vivid, agonizing. Then a faint sound from outside, the creak of the gate, the soft thud of footsteps on the porch. My heart leaped into my throat, a sudden, frantic flutter. I knew it was her, even before I heard the key turn in the lock. She walked in, her face flushed, sweat still clinging to her skin. She was wearing her race finisher's medal, a gaudy testament to her achievement. But her eyes, when she finally met mine, were devoid of triumph. They were haunted. She didn't speak. She just stood there, the metal hanging heavy around her neck, a silent accuser. I didn't speak either. The words had all been said, the tears all been shed. The air between us was thick with unspoken regret, with the wreckage of what we had been. Finally, she walked over to the mantelpiece, to the space where our wedding photo usually sat. With trembling hands, she unclasped the metal cold against her skin. She held it for a moment, her gaze fixed on it. Then, with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, she placed it on the mantelpiece, right in front of the empty spot. Then she turned to me, her shoulders slumped, her expression of one of utter defeat. There was no apology, no explanation, just a profound, heartbreaking sadness. She didn't need to say anything. The medal, sitting there, a symbol of her supposed triumph, now represented the stark reality of her failure. It was a monument to her betrayal, a silent testament to the fact that no matter how far she ran, no matter how hard she pushed, she couldn't outrun the truth. I watched her, my own emotions a tangled mess of anger, grief, and a strange, detached numbness.
The cinematic ending I might have once craved, the dramatic confrontation, the cathartic release, had dissolved into this quiet, devastating aftermath. There was no grand resolution, no sudden epiphany, just the slow, agonizing process of picking up the pieces of a life that had been irrevocably broken. She didn't leave, not that night, not for a while. We existed in the same space, two strangers inhabiting a shared history, the silence between us a chasm too wide to bridge. The marathon was over, but the race, the real, soul-crushing race for survival, had just begun. And as I looked at her, at the ghost of the woman I'd loved, I knew this was not an ending, but a brutal, unending beginning. The scent of her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, a phantom ache, a reminder of the distance that had grown between us, a distance measured not in miles, but in the devastating weight of broken trust. The metal on the mantelpiece glinted dully in the fading light, a silent, mocking promise of a victory that had ultimately led to nothing but ruin.